I want to be in Montreal so badly. Miss it a lot. Hello. Oh,
Hey Connor, how's it going, man?
good. How are you?
Very good. Thank you for joining me.
Of course. It's my pleasure.
So, what are you doing with your Monday today?
What am I doing? Interviews? I just did one. I'm doing this one, and then I'm gonna do one, an in-person one, which I haven't done in like, I don't know, 3 years at this point. Four.
Wow, it's gonna feel a bit surreal, I guess, after all that time.
Yeah, I feel very nervous about it, which I haven't in a long time. But it's also the St. Louis Post Dispatch, which is like the I don't know. It's kind of like the paper in St. Louis.
So you're like
It's
local boys done good.
I'm sure that won't be the theme of it, but I'm sure it's going to be like a blurb in the art section or something. But it's still like, it's the paper my dad reads, so it's like
There you go.
something. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, if it makes the parents proud and give them something to show their neighbors, then that's a good thing, right?
Exactly. And you're in Montreal?
I'm in Montreal. Yes.
Great.
But I'm from the UK, which hence the accent.
I was going to say it's a strange region of Montreal that has that accent. But, well,
Yeah.
that's awesome. I want to be in Montreal so badly. Miss it a lot. Just I want to tour in general, but I'm really missing Canada. So
What's your memory of
hopefully,
Montreal? A lot of people that I speak to from other places seem to have very fond memories of being in Montreal.
yeah. Well, I mean, we've played some of the worst shows that we've ever played in Montreal. Um, it's just like for like attendance or something, or like we just mess up really bad when we're there. It's like a remarkably like we always fuck up when we go there, but it's also just like I think part of it is also that we just have so much fun while we're in Montreal, just like
Right.
it so much. And it's also where Chris Walla, who did our last record, lived for a while, and where we finished our record in. So that's I don't know. On
Yeah.
top of that, I also like I took French in high school, and it's the only place where I can like excusably use my very intermediate French. Um,
Yeah. Well, I've been living here 6 years, and my French is probably at a similar level to yours by the sounds of it. So
I'm
it's
sure it's a lot better, but uh,
I'm not going to say anything. So anyway, let's talk about your new album. Are you excited to get this album out after the year that we've had?
yes, I am so excited. I need it to be out of my hands. I need it to be away from me. Um, it's really I mean, it's a combination of we had been working on it for a very long time, and also the brutal amount of time that we have been rolling it out. It's we're in the fifth of 6 months of rolling this thing out,
Mm,
um, which is like it's just what you have to do at this point for a band of our size, a very middle class band. You just have to. It's got to be a long rollout, or to like maximize whatever the success of the album, just with the way things work,
yeah,
and also with the pandemic, not knowing when anything would return or if it would return. Still not knowing if it will
yeah,
return.
for sure.
I'm proud of us for being inventive about the way we covered and filled up 6 months of time. We made our ritual website, and we did all of these things. The singles that we released, we made them, we released half of the album before the album comes out.
That's what I was going to ask you. How do you feel about people hearing so much of the album ahead of the actual release of the album?
Well, on one hand, I understand where people are coming from, where they're like, I hate how many songs you're releasing before this thing comes out. But on the other hand, I have a lot more like, you don't get it kind of attitude towards it to people that kind of come with that attitude. Um, a, the amount that Spotify controls the industry at this point and like dictates the success or failure of albums makes us not able to just surprise album release something or even put out like one or two songs before, along with the pandemic and not being able to play live. And B, we put so much time and argument and thought into which songs we would put out strategically, because we didn't put out the songs specifically that we thought would be the most successful as singles, as much as we really tried to put out songs that we kind of kept using this term like emotional whiplash between the songs, where it was like, we're going to put out the longest dirge of a song first. This really like, you know, kind of like an epic, that we're going to release that first. It's the last song on the album. And then we're going to follow it with the most like poppy song on the record. And then we're going to follow that with the most like rock, you know, kind of queen worship thing that we did on the record, to try to make it this thing where when people hear all of these singles, they go, these don't seem like they could possibly exist on the same album. I really got to listen to the full album to understand if they pulled it off, which I think we did. But I think if you just heard the singles as we released them, you'd be like, what could this thing sound like? So it was both like kind of out of necessity, but then also like it became this fun puzzle to put together, or a puzzle to like create for other people to put together. Yeah. Which is kind of the theme of the entire rollout, is like puzzles and confusion and kind of like this connection between all of these things that amounts in, I got to listen to the album when it comes out. And on top of that, it's also the thing I don't respond to comments, but my thought every time I see somebody saying like, why would they put out so many singles? My thought is always like, well, you don't have to listen to them. Like, you could just avoid them. They're not like on the radio, you know, they're not like in your face on a commercial or something. Like, you have to actually go out of your way to listen to them. So like, why don't you calm down? That's my attitude.
For sure. And I was going to ask you actually, because I've noticed that these records the songs that you've released so far from the album, like you say, they are very different. And I'm personally intrigued to see how they sit and flow and what comes in between all those songs. Tell me about some of the lyrical themes. Are the lyrical themes throughout the album as varied as the actual sounds?
They are, but they all share. So I guess to kind of give it some background, it's so the very first thing that I came across that made me say like, oh, this is what I want to write the album about, is this cartoon called Joe Pera Talks You to Sleep. It's this comedian, Joe Pera. It's an Adult Swim kind of cartoon where it's essentially like this long cartoon that is meant to be like funny, but also like boring enough for you to fall asleep watching. It's like kind of a meditation thing. But he has this part in it. I love it so much, and I love Joe Pera, but he has this part in it where he says, he's talking about Stephen Hawking cheating on his wife. And he says, you got to think of this from Stephen Hawking's perspective. He looks into the universe and ponders how vast and grand it is. So what does it matter if one man cheats on his wife in the grand scheme of things? And then he says, but looking down that same train of thought, if the universe is so vast and expansive, if you as this insignificant person found somebody that loves and cares about you and that you love and care about, why would you want to hurt them? So it's this like dichotomy of significance and insignificance that I got just so like, I called Eric right away after I saw it, and I was like, this is what I want to write the album about, is this idea of that dichotomy, the cosmic significance and insignificance, and taking it on both as saying we are insignificant, we are these small specks in the grand reality universe, but at the same time, we are these specks that are surrounded by other specks. And once you start drawing the lines between people, the people that you love, or the community, or philosophies, or geography, once you start drawing those connections and looking at them, they spider web into the entirety of the universe. So that is the idea. And because of that, I didn't want to take on and say, like, oh, I'm going to write about that as lyrics as much as write about those actual small connections and amount them to the big thing. So the idea is there are 10 songs on the album, 10 themes to explore. And each of them is meant to be representative of the whole thing. So they have this core theme underneath them, but each one takes on like a different idea. And it's the same way that we tried to think about like the music for everything. There's this core kind of idea to everything, this sort of attitude that we took towards writing everything, and also the production aspect of everything. Eric produced everything, and we did it all in St. Louis and some in Georgia. But being able to have this core idea allows us to expand beyond it and not really have to keep one. It's not like a story of one, like a journey up a mountain or something. It's more like all these different themes that amount to this core concept.
Interesting. That's really interesting. Even more now, I want to listen to the album in full. So you mentioned that you recorded some of it in Georgia, and I know you've been working with the guys from Manchester Orchestra. You're going to be touring a lot with the guys from Manchester Orchestra. Where did that connection come about? Because they've obviously released a really pretty amazing album recently as well. So it seems like a big year for both of you guys.
Well, it's a big year for them. I hope it's a big year for us. I very much hope that. But to answer that, how it came about was, so we've done 2 tours with them before this upcoming one. The first was in support of their new at the time new album, A Black Mile to the Surface, which was, I mean, we got to know them really well, and we grew to be very good friends. Looked at them as this, like, kind of big brother band, who, beyond just touring together, we were showing them demos of our album Nearer My God at the time. And beyond just sort of the palling around on tour, especially after the tour, we kind of had this, communication between ourselves, like, calling or texting each other, just talking about music or life or whatever. That was really important. And also just the amount of advice that they were giving us all the time was incredible. And Andy and I, and then we did our second tour with them. They just keep asking us to go back out with them, which is, we'll never complain about. But they were supporting the 10-year anniversary of one of their albums, and they asked us to go on tour. And on that one, Near My God had already come out, and we were showing them demos of and playing one of the songs from the new album. At the time, we only had 2 demos, and they were very different from what they are now. And so I talked to Andy a lot about the lyrics for that, for one of those songs, and it changed so dramatically, both because of Andy and Eric's input on them. It's like an insane dramatic shift in the lyrical ideas of it. But after that, we were talking so consistently about like lyrics, and also about, like, we were trying to figure out how we were going to put out our next album, talking about if we should do it independent or sign to a label, or, what should we do? And Andy was giving us an insane amount of advice in that way. And then at a certain point, it's like, we just we're already doing it. Why don't you take on like kind of an official role in this album and actually work on it in some way? And he is like, yes, of course, I want to do that. So the way Andy participated in the album was both getting on like Zoom calls with me, and like going over lyrics and talking, I would send demos, and then we would talk about the lyrics and really edit the lyrics, where he would say, like, this is coming. I would explain, like, here's what I'm trying to say with all of this stuff. Here's the theme that I'm working on for this one. And then he would say kind of like, I don't think that's really coming through. Or this is coming through really well. I think you should focus more on this, which is something I crave as a writer, is like an editor. And then it came time to go to Georgia after a lot of testing and trying to solve the safety precautions of it. We finally went to Georgia, and there we actually recorded some stuff. We worked on the structures of songs. We recorded a lot of the drums there. John came down to work on it. And so Andy worked as kind of like, and Andy recorded some vocals as well. We recorded some synthesizers. So at that point, it really became Andy being sort of an extra writer or an extra member of the band at that point. And Rob coming in for a few days, also he did the same thing, which is really great because it was he became like an amazing tiebreaker for Eric and I. Eric is the producer of this album, and he this is his first time truly being like the lone producer of something, which he did an amazing job at, and he's incredible at what he does.
The sound on the album is phenomenal, I think. And
thank you so much.
I'm kind of picky about that stuff.
Well, I think so too. And I think Eric is just like one of the most talented people I've ever worked with. But that being said, I've also worked with Eric for like over 15 years at this point. He and I met him when I was like 12, and we were making music and bands together that entire time. So because of that, he and I argue about things consistently, and we're getting better and better about like how to healthily work together. But I think we really needed a tiebreaker in a lot of these arguments that we had, and Andy provided that in a really great way, because it wasn't like Andy was truly like picking sides ever. He was truly just listening. There's a song on the album, If I Believed in Love, that I was like, cut it. It sucks. Let's not do it. I think it's a garbage song. And Eric's like, there's really something here. We're just not working on it enough. And Andy came in and said like, no, this is like my favorite song on the album. You just need to restructure and like make it better. And I was outvoted there, and the tie was broken, and we worked on it and became like one of my favorite songs on the album, which is great. Yeah.
So you're going to be going on tour. I think it starts in October, right? They tour with Manchester Orchestra. And at the moment, the very last date that you've announced is here in Montreal, which is in March of next year. So you've planned a long way ahead already. So obviously we're looking forward to having you back in Montreal. I know you're looking forward to being back in Montreal. What for you, as the guy on stage singing the songs, makes for the perfect show? When you come off stage and you look back at that, what you've just done, what is it that just makes the perfect show for you?
I think in a physical sense, if I'm totally exhausted, both vocally and my body is exhausted, then I know that we've done something right. If I have gotten like hurt during it, if I'm bruised after it, it's like, I think that is the most important thing, is truly putting too much into a show. Like, especially as like a front man for something, or as thinking of it as entertainment in that regard, and like not thinking about tomorrow's show, but really leaving it on the stage, I think is so important. And it's something that the shows that I believe are like the ones that didn't work out, or that they weren't that great, are the ones where I leave and I'm not completely exhausted. And a lot of times that's because like, sometimes it's because the crowd wasn't really into it, and I just felt like too self-conscious to like really put everything I had into it. But then other times it's because I was just so in my head about, and this happens on support tours sometimes, I'm just so in my head that nobody likes it. But to me, those same support tours are like the absolute best times to really put everything into it, because there's this feeling of trying to win over a crowd. that is such an awesome challenge of like, 1,000 people that aren't necessary. There's maybe a pocket of them that are there to see you, but for the most part, people don't know who you are, and trying to convince them that like this is worth looking into
Yeah.
by way of putting on like a really great performance.
One of the positive things about streaming is that when a band is announced as a support for a tour, the fans of the headline act can quite easily delve into the support act's back catalog if they want to, and then maybe even be a fan before they turn up at the show, just because they found out this band is going to be playing the same night. So that can definitely work in your favor. And I think with you guys and Manchester Orchestra, even though your sounds are very different in a lot of ways, I think it's definitely a really good fit. And obviously it's worked in the past, and it seems to be working in the future. Every
time we tour with them, it is like the best tour that we've ever done, and I hope this is the same. There's this, like, I totally agree with you. I think that that's great when somebody's able to dive into a back catalog, or just into a catalog of a support band, to check them out before a tour. There's something about, though, playing to people that have no idea who you are that excites me so much. There's this story, our friends in the band Code Orange, we did a tour with their other band called Adventures a while back. Yeah, they're amazing.
I don't think they're doing anything anymore, are they? Because Code Orange is obviously taken off. So
yeah, I think that they don't want anybody to know that was a band. But so we've known them for a long time, and we talked to them. We've just been friends with them for a long time, and they told us a story at one point about they were touring with the band Killswitch Engage, and the fans of that band are like pretty brutal, like pretty judgmental towards the support act.
It's like, and so
yeah, exactly. Like, but there was like consistent shows where essentially when they would go up to play, a lot of the fans would literally turn around, like turn their back to the stage, because they're like, I don't want any part of this, which is so insane. Like, how mean do you have to be to do that? And the idea for them, like once they started noticing it happening, they would like kind of huddle up beforehand and be like, our entire job right now is to make every person in this arena turn around and like stare at us. We want to make something that is like impossible to look away from, which I thought is just like, now I have that attitude when we play, even though people aren't turning their backs to us. It's like, I want to make a performance that you don't even want to take a picture of it, because that means you're not looking directly at it. Like you're not going to look down at your phone or talk to your friend. It's like every moment of the thing, the goal is for it to be the most captivating thing that you could watch. And to like, not to say that I am like, it's not ever a versus thing, but it's like, I want to make every attempt to upstage the band that we're supporting. And that's a fun thing to do with Manchester Orchestra, because we are incapable of upstaging their performance. It's like, seriously, I don't know if you've seen Manchester live.
I've seen them a couple of times. They're very loud.
They're very loud.
The first time I saw Manchester Orchestra, I didn't take any earplugs because I thought, it's kind of an indie rock band. It's not going to be that loud. I've been to plenty of metal shows. And I actually had to ask security if there was any earplugs in the building, because they were so loud.
Well, and they have the same attitude that we have about that. When they support bands, they're like, the whole goal is to make everybody leave that venue and go like, I came for the wrong band. Like I was, why didn't I know this band before? And they seriously, I mean, they bring it every time. It's in no way a versus thing, but I do think that there is something about that kind of like, in every sense of the word, friendly rivalry. It's like a sibling band where it's like, we're going to go out there. We're essentially like, our job is kind of warm up the crowd for Manchester, but we're going to take it to another level, or at least we're going to try to take it to another level where it's like, it's difficult for them to follow us. But they like our band. We love their band. They love ours. When they go on stage, our hope is that they put on a better show because of the performance we just gave. And I think that's their hope as well. I think that's the hope of any headlining band, that the support band just like pushed you to like make something more of a spectacle than what it was originally intended to be.
Okay, so I wanted to ask you, if somebody had never heard your band before and they just said, what song shall I listen to first? What song would you, because your music's so varied, what song would you want them to hear first?
Okay, so I'm going to give you two answers to this. The first is the song I would choose would be the opening song on this album, 737. I think that is the one that I would be like, oh, you should listen to this. It's the most kind of like us that our band has been. But the second answer that I'm going to give you is this thing that I have been thinking about a ton with that exact question. Because when I'm talking to other other artists and giving any piece of advice, it's that to think of, not to think of that question as being what song do you show or what descriptors to like how to describe the band, as much as to be able to tell a story in some way. Are you familiar with the album The Party by Andy Schaaf?
I wouldn't say I was super familiar with it. I've heard it though. Yeah.
I have told so many people to listen to his album, like that album, The Party. And I feel like every single one of them has at least listened to it or checked it out, mainly because the way to describe that album is not in like what it sounds like, as much as saying the album is a case study of a party and like being a person at a party, looking around the room and writing like a story about each interaction happening in this party. So there's, you know, kind of like a bi-curious friendship song. There is a song about a guy doing magic at the party, being like really lame. There's a song about the first person to arrive at the party. The person, you know, it's like the faux pas of being early. So there's all of these relationships happening, and he's writing about them individually. And that is such a amazing idea, amazing concept for an album, but it's also something that I'm like, that's how you describe an album. It's not like it's indie rock or check this song out. It's like, nah, you're able to tell the story. So that's really what we tried to create in this one, was being able to, like, that thing that I was describing of like the significance, the cosmic significance of the thing. It's 10 themes that all relate to like the significance. Anyway, right. That's not the answer. I know that's not the answer you're looking for. I just felt like answer. I haven't been asked that question yet, and I'm like, oh, this is the time where I'm able to like actually talk about this thing I've been preaching.
Okay, so talking about albums that you love and you want people to hear, what's a classic album that you think everybody needs to hear at least once in their lifetime?
Wow. This is one that I feel like it is more likely that you would miss this album, but there's an album by The No Twist called Neon Golden. That is, to me, like one of the most important records that came out of like the 2000s. And I feel like it is such a forgotten album that like just people don't really respect the No Twist as like some important band, but to me they're like such an important band. It's where I draw a lot of inspiration from. And that album specifically is like, you know, there's few like perfect albums out there in my opinion, like an album that start to finish has no lull. And that is probably the most important album in my opinion, that people have never heard. Like there's other albums that I consider to be perfect. Like Phoenix is Wolfgang Amadeus Phoenix is I think like an absolute just no moment in the entire record that like lets up. It's just great from start to finish. I think Radiohead's OK Computer and Kid A are another couple examples. I think the last one that I would say is like one that I feel like a lot of people maybe skip over or something. not necessarily, but whatever, is Parentheses by Sigur Rós. I think that's another, like, it doesn't stop. It's just great start to finish.
So for fans of your band, what's an album that you absolutely love that they would be surprised that you love?
I don't know, man. I feel like we wear like our influences on our sleeve in some way. Okay, for instance, Carly Rae Jepsen's Dedicated is an album that I think is just spectacular. And I feel like I've talked about it enough, and our new album has enough like pop influence on it to make that kind of an obvious connection, I guess. Mm-hmm. But maybe that would be surprising. It's not necessarily the most surprising thing ever, but like one album that is one of my favorite albums of all time is Dare to Be Stupid by Weird Al. And that might be a surprising thing only because our music is so unfunny. There's like nothing humorous about it. I guess, again, another band that we kind of talk about all the time, but Iowa by Slipknot. No, that's an album. There are very few albums that all three, me, John, and Eric, all like adore. And Iowa by Slipknot is definitely one that we are all like, it's not just we like it, we truly regard it as one of the best albums of all time.
I love the fact that you went from Carly Rae to Slipknot within about 60 seconds. That a lot of kudos from my point of view. So that's great. Well, good luck with the album. I love what I've heard so far. I'm looking forward to hearing it in its entirety in order. And we will see you in the new year with Manchester Orchestra if the world corrects itself. And we look forward to that. But in the meantime, thanks for spending some time with me.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. Thank you for having me in your home.
My pleasure. Yeah, it is my home.
I love your wood pile back there.
Oh yeah, well, that's more for the winter in Montreal. We have like a wood burner down here in the basement, and we make sure that we don't run out of that kind of stuff. So,
well, it makes for a beautiful aesthetic.
Yeah, it does too, actually. So, all right, thanks, Connor, and we'll see you next year. You take care and good luck with everything.
You too. We'll see you then.
All right, cheers.